A single beam of moonlight fractured through the canopy of string lights that draped the wedding tent, creating an illusion of falling stars. Maya knelt on the dew-cooled grass, the pale fabric of her dress dampening at the hem. In her hands, a battered shoebox bore a crude label scrawled in black marker, "Leftovers." The scuffed edges and peeling newspaper flaps spoke of neglect long before tonight. Around her, guests murmured and chuckled under breathless anticipation, unaware how abruptly every eye shuddered onto Maya's trembling figure. Above the cluster of white satin drapes, Evelyn stood like a statue carved from marble. Her tailored blue suit and strands of pearls gleamed under the warm glow. Without haste, she released a brittle, blackened slice of toast into Maya's unresisting palm. The fragment cracked against Maya's skin, its charred aroma flooding her senses and igniting a memory as vivid as fire. In that instantaneous rupture of time, Maya recalled the late afternoon 2 weeks earlier, when spray paint and silk ribbon had littered the Harper family living room. Evelyn, standing rigid with a clipboard in hand, had barked directives while Maya applied glue to lace-trimmed favor bags. The hot glue had blistered her fingertips, yet Evelyn's expression had remained unmoved. Nathan reclined on the couch, impassive, a half-empty beer cradled in one hand and the other draped carelessly over the back cushion. He had offered one languid nod when Evelyn turned his way, then returned to scrolling through his phone. No sweat beads had formed upon his brow, no ribbons had needed trimming, no gratitude ever surfaced. Back in the present, the orchestra's strings swelled to bridge the silence that had swallowed the tent. Maya's breath caught in her throat like a wounded bird. She forced herself to stand, the shoebox sliding against her palms as though resisting her claim. A single sob threatened escape, but she held it at bay. The crush of compassion muted itself under the weight of humiliation. Every cluster of guests circled the lawn like vultures, their delicate tulle gowns and crisp linen suits staining the scene with casual cruelty. Beyond the perimeter of glowing lanterns, Maya found refuge among the twisted trunks of ancient olive trees. The rough bark rasped against her back as she sank to the ground, still clutching the box. Moonlight pooled in crevices of the roots, and somewhere overhead a nightbird called. There, far from the polite spectacle, memory unfurled once more. The dozens of nights spent poring over community college textbooks under a desk lamp, the ache in her limbs as she flipped burgers through double shifts, the sting of her mother's unmet gaze at every birthday dinner. All those fragments of a life sacrificed to invisible approval coalesced into a single urgency. Escape. Tears slipped free, carving cold rivulets down her cheeks. The weight of countless compromises rested on her shoulders like a shroud. She pressed, her forehead against the box's torn flaps, as though the brittle toast might whisper some hidden meaning. But guilt and regret roiled within her, and there was no answer in charred crumbs. A gentle hand rested on her shoulder, and the scent of lavender mint soap drifted in the night air. In the half-light, Alex knelt beside her, his presence steady and unflinching. He offered no words, for none were needed. From his coat pocket, he withdrew a slender silver key bound to a tiny ring. Its polished surface caught the moonlight and fractured it into shards of possibility. He laid it upon the shoebox with deliberate care, as though that single gesture could dissolve all the years of quiet rejection. A soft breeze nudged loose tendrils of Maya's hair, and in that moment, the world shifted on its axis. The weight of the toast seemed to dissipate, revealing a hollow space where resentment had settled. The box felt absurdly heavy now, its value undermined by the promise of the key. She rose slowly, sliding the metallic talisman into her palm. The path back through the tent's entrance glowed like a river of warm lava, but Maya stepped forward with steady determination. Every footfall carried her further from the girl who had yielded to silence. A trisected memory drifted through her mind. The morning she had ignored her own reflection to watch Nathan open a brand new car in the driveway. A Thanksgiving when everyone praised his store-bought pie while her homemade offering gathered dust. The afternoon she last hesitated before asking for recognition and swallowed the words again. All of it had led her to this fragment of midnight. Truth beneath the olive branches. Alex rose at her side, and without overt signposts, they navigated around folding chairs and overturned bouquets. Past the maze of reception frippery, a worn sedan waited under boughs heavy with moon-silvered leaves. Maya slid into the passenger seat, the shoebox cradled beside her like a fading memory. Alex closed the door and climbed in, then nudged. The ignition. The engine's low hum felt like the heartbeat of a new beginning. Through the windshield, the wedding tent's glow receded. Each string of lights winked out of view until only the muted halo of distant lanterns remained. Maya exhaled, feeling the years of silent labor loosen their hold. The shoebox's torn lid shifted. She placed a thumb on the folded flap and sealed it one final time. Beneath the flimsy exterior lay nothing that still bound her. Only the promise of the silver key, cool and substantial, nestled in her palm, as They turned onto the quiet country road. The olive grove and the shoebox disappeared behind them. Maya's gaze drifted to the horizon, where the first fingers of dawn began to pale the sky. In that fragile moment before sunrise, she understood that worth could never be dispensed in leftovers. The world she chose to step into was untarnished by crumbs. And the key in her hand was proof that a life wholly claimed lay just beyond the next bend. The engine's steady hum carries Maya and Alex down a winding country road blanketed in moonlight. Headlights carve a narrow ribbon of clarity through the surrounding darkness. Maya's gaze drifts between the passing trees and the shoebox resting beside her. The metal key in her palm feels impossibly solid, its weight a reminder that some promises demand a turning point. Alex steers without haste, fingers curled lightly around the wheel. He offers no words, but Maya senses his intent through the set of his shoulders and the quiet resolve in his posture. In the hush of the car, her thoughts swirl until they coil into a single, urgent question. She presses her fingertips against the key's smooth surface, as though coaxing the truth from its cool curves. A flash of memory fractures the moment. 6 months earlier, Alex crosses the threshold of a near-derelict house just outside town. Pale green paint peels from weathered. Boards and windows gape with unhinged slats. He pauses at the sagging porch, brushing dust from a rusted doorknob. In his arms, a roll of blueprints unfolds beneath a single bare bulb that swings from a frayed wire. Friends assemble tools in the shadows, trading quiet nods. Even then, Alex carries a determined gleam in his eyes that Maya mistakes for pride. In her alone, never imagining that he labors to build a sanctuary. Back in the present, the car turns onto a cul-de-sac that seems suspended in time. Manicured lawns border low hedges, and porch lights sprinkle soft halos onto trimmed sidewalks. At the end of the street, the house stands in its pale green splendor, the red front door glowing like an ember waiting to be stroked. Window boxes, bristle with fresh blooms and a braided wreath of jasmine adorns the entrance. The walkway gleams under hidden lanterns set along the edge, each one casting a golden footprint in the grass. Maya's chest swells as the car halts in the drive. She lifts the shoebox and the key, her breath catching on the air that smells faintly of varnish and new timber. Alex steps out, opening her door and extending a steady hand. Without a word, he guides her across the porch, each step echoing with the promise of beginnings. Inside, the foyer unfolds in soft lamplight. Walls painted the color of palest mist cradle an entry table hewn from oak. A cluster of small frames holds photographs of Maya and Alex through seasons that now feel like a single heartbeat. A brass lamp glows atop a stack of renovation journals, its pages splayed open on plans and material samples. Beyond the foyer, a living room stretches, its floors of pine freshly sanded. A couch upholstered in muted linen stands centered before a hearth framed in polished stone. On the mantel rests a single sunflower in a slender vase, its golden petals bright against the neutral backdrop. Maya places the shoebox on a low table near the window. The lid creaks as she lifts it and peers inside one last time. The charred toast lies curled at the corner of the box, brittle and hollow. She closes it gently and tucks it beneath a shelf as though entombing a lesson learned. The weight of it retreats, replaced by lightness so profound it feels as though she could float. Alex watches her with quiet satisfaction, then leads her by the hand into the kitchen. White cabinets bear brushed nickel handles and marble countertops, gleam under recessed lights. A steaming pot simmers on the stove, releasing tendrils of savory broth into the air. He points to a small stack of mugs beside the sink, each stamped with her initials. Maya recognizes the pattern from the mug she once broke in a moment of clumsy exhaustion, replaced here as a testament that some breaks are mended with care. A distant church bell tolls 2 a.m, though its echo feels more like greeting than admonition. Maya offers Alex a gentle smile and presses the key into his palm. The gesture speaks gratitude and wonder without need for words. He returns the key, pressing it back into her hand to emphasize its importance. Maya tucks it into a pocket of her dress as if hiding a secret too precious to expose. They settle on stools at the kitchen peninsula. Alex ladles broth into the mugs and sets them before Maya. The warmth seeps into her fingers through the ceramic, a balm to lingering ache. She closes her eyes as she breathes in the aroma of simmered vegetables and herbs. In the hush, she feels the sharp edges of her past begin to blur and soften. A sequence of memories drifts through her mind. The first time she confided to Alex that she felt invisible in her own family. The mornings she snuck out before dawn to clock in at a diner. The moments she bit her tongue when praise went exclusively to Nathan. Each recollection now shifts shape, stripped of shame and reframed as proof of her endurance. The kitchen's soft golden light seems to cradle those former selves as one might cradle a fragile bird until its wings heal. Through the silent house, a breeze stirs the curtains at the window, unveiling a view of the moonlit street. Maya reaches out to smooth a curtain hem, noticing how the motif of intertwining vines matches the jasmine wreath outside. She senses a pattern emerging. Resilience is like a vine that finds purchase even in cracked mortar. Over time, it can reclaim walls long believed beyond repair. Alex stands and crosses the room to a low cabinet. He withdraws a slender volume bound in leather. Maya recognizes it as her own journal from community college, the one she kept hidden, beneath her mattress. She had written of hopes and fears in looping script that now feels almost foreign. Alex sets it before her and opens to a blank page at the back. He gestures toward a pen clipped to the table. Maya picks up the pen. For a moment she hesitates. The page waits, unblemished, as though poised to record the next chapter beyond old confines. She places the pen to paper and writes 2 words. I choose me. The letters feel warm beneath her fingertip, honest and irrevocable. The pen lifts, and Maya exhales. She slides the journal closed and returns it to Alex, who nods in silent approval. No more margins will hold her captive. Her self-worth now resides in every line she will write and every door she will unlock. Down the hallway, a guest room gleams in muted blues and grays. Alex flips a switch and 2 bedside lamps ignite. On the nightstand, a small vase holds a single white rose. Every detail speaks of deliberation rather than obligation. Maya feels the absence of performative obligation, as a presence so profound it fills corners she did not know were hollow. In the living room, Alex lowers the blinds and dims the lights to a soft glow. They settle side by side on the couch, the new home enfolding them in quiet intimacy. The shoebox remains tucked beneath the entry table, out of sight but never forgotten. Maya's fingers curl around the key in her pocket, warm against her side. Outside, dawn's first brush begins to pale the sky. Inside, Maya leans her head on Alex's shoulder. No words are spoken, for the silence is full of meaning. In the half-dark, she feels the pulse of possibility echo in every corner of the house she now calls home. Dawn's pale light filtered through lace curtains as Maya lay awake on the new linen sheets. The echo of the church bell from the night before lingered in her mind. Outside, the street lay silent under dew-darkened leaves. The house seemed to breathe around her, every board and beam steeped in the promise of renewal. A stringent memory surfaced, the morning of her high school graduation when Evelyn had hurried past her on the front porch without a word. Maya had stood in a cap and gown, diploma in trembling hands, yearning for the simplest nod of pride. Instead, Evelyn had offered a terse pat to Nathan's shoulder, exclaiming over his acceptance letter to a prestigious university. That moment had cemented years of quiet erasure, and yet Maya had pressed on, wondering if approval was ever within reach. In the living room below, sunlight pooled on polished pine floors. Alex slipped from their bedroom and found Maya watching the entryway where the shoebox still waited, its label no longer mocking but memorial. He poured coffee into 2 mugs and returned to her side. The aroma of dark roast mingled with the lingering scent of jasmine from the wreath on the door. Maya accepted a mug, feeling warmth seep into her fingertips. They moved through the open-plan kitchen, where the soft click of cabinet doors sounded like little declarations of independence. Nichols insisted on naming each drawer, but Alex had instead chosen simple labels in elegant script. Every corner of the house spoke of intentional care, a quiet rebellion against neglect. Outside, a lone figure appeared at the edge of the driveway. Nathan stood beneath the porch light, shoulders slumped under an ill-fitting suit. His expression held an apology that trembled on his lips. Maya's heart stuttered. Guilt and residual hurt tangled as she considered whether to let him inside. A flashback. The Christmas dinner 3 years earlier when Evelyn had gifted Nathan a high-end watch, praising its craftsmanship and how it would suit the heir of the family. Maya had received a repurposed candle from a previous hostess party, boxed haphazardly. The candle's scent had smelled of yesterday's gathering, and Maya had swallowed her disappointment as the adults laughed around the table. Back. In the present, Alex set his mug on the counter and offered Maya a steadying glance. Without words, she understood his counsel. The choice belonged to her alone. She set her mug down, squared her shoulders, and walked to the front door. Nathan's figure stiffened as the door swung open. He stepped inside, hands buried in pockets. The house was quiet except for the rhythmic hum of the heater. He looked around as though seeing brightness and comfort for the first time. Maya closed the door behind him, the click resonating like a boundary drawn in sand. They stood in the foyer framed by oak. Grandpa's old grandfather clock, recently reclaimed in the renovation, ticked behind them. Its steady cadence contrasted sharply with the uneven beat of Maya's heart. Nathan's gaze drifted to the shelf where the shoebox lay tucked out of sight. His breath caught. A trickle of revelation spilled through Maya. Nathan had never understood the full weight of obligation she had carried. He had basked in his mother's favor without ever viewing the work behind her success. In his eyes, she saw raw regret. He swallowed, stepping forward. Maya noticed how the light from the window caught the tear in his lapel, a remnant from last night's celebration. The subtle fraying symbolized the unraveling of their old roles. He scratched at his chin, avoiding her eyes, as though searching for the words to bridge years of silence. In the living room, the sunflower on the mantel reminded Maya of the seed of friendship she had sown with Alex. It stood tall and bright, unashamed of its origin. The contrast between fragile renegade blossom and her own bruised resilience struck her. People choose sunlight when they decide to grow. Nathan finally spoke, his voice low and uncertain. Maya felt his apology before she heard it, a vibration, through the floorboards. She held her ground, recalling every slight and every moment she had swallowed her voice. Yet she also remembered the late-night text urging her to seek kindness. She lifted her hand and laid it lightly on his arm. a gesture without promise but resonant with compassion. Long shadows stretched across the floor as morning light deepened. Nathan nodded once, a silent accord. They moved away from the foyer into the kitchen, where 2 mugs still sat half full. Alex watched from a doorway, his presence a steady glow. Maya realized that this reunion need not erase her journey. She could welcome her brother here without surrendering all she had become. A sudden hush settled. Maya imagined the scene at her mother's house, where Evelyn would awaken to an empty driveway and find only the shoebox and an unsigned note. The memory of the toast lingered like ash, but its sting had faded to embers. In the living room, Maya guided Nathan to the couch upholstered in muted linen. He sat, careful not to wrinkle the fabric. She joined him, letting the cushions cradle her new stillness. Between them, unspoken truths settled like dust motes in a shaft of light. Alex joined them with fresh mugs of coffee, placing a third on the oak table. The coffee's steam rose in lazy spirals, as though tracing new boundaries between past and future. Nathan reached for his mug, fingers brushing Maya's. In that small contact lay the complexity of sibling bond, shared history, pain, and the fragile possibility of transformation. The grandfather clock chimed the quarter hour, its voice echoing through the open plan space. Maya inhaled the rich aroma of coffee and felt something inside her unclench. She realized that compassion need not weaken her resolve. She could open her home to her brother while holding fast to the foundation of self-worth she had built. In the hush after the clock's chime, Maya rose and moved to the window. Through the glass, she saw Evelyn's house perched in gloom at the end of the lane. The silhouette of the wedding tent lingered like memory on the back lawn. Maya felt no pull to return. She turned back to Nathan, whose gaze followed her. In his eyes, she saw sorrow and hope woven together. She offered a small, encouraging nod. He lifted his mug in silent salute. Together, they sipped the coffee that tasted of warmth and renewal. Outside, the morning settled across the street. Birds chirped distant greetings. Inside, Maya's heart settled with the steadiness of the grandfather clock. She was no longer kneeling on damp grass. She was home. Morning light filtered through the gauzy curtains of the guest room, casting pale stripes across the unfinished hardwood floor. Maya rose before Alex, careful not to disturb the gentle rhythm of his dreaming. She retrieved her journal from the bedside table and turned to the page bearing the words, "I choose me." The ink had dried into the fibers, a tactile reminder of her new resolve. In the kitchen, sunlight warmed the marble countertop where 2 mugs steamed side by side. Maya poured a measure of coffee into each, then carried one to the front door and placed it on the small table beneath the jasmine wreath. She pressed her palm against the smooth wood and visualized the life about to unfold. A soft chime rose from her phone, announcing an incoming call. The screen displayed Evelyn's name. In rigid typeface, Maya's pulse lurched. She tapped the decline button without hesitation and returned her focus to the porch light dancing through the leaves. Earlier that week, Evelyn had delivered a brisk voice message laced with thinly veiled reproach. She had commented on how quiet the house was without the bustle of wedding preparations and had asked Maya to reconsider a Sunday dinner invitation. Maya had felt the familiar tug of guilt, only to banish it with a mental image of the charred toast and the smashed confidence it symbolized. A secondary flashback surfaced. Maya, as a child, perched on her bedroom windowsill, watching her mother and Nathan under the floodlights beside a new car. She had longed for her own moment of jubilation, a simple acknowledgement that she existed beyond chores and ribbons. But the external frame had always captured only Nathan's grin. Back on the porch, Maya lifted the mug of coffee and inhaled the nutty aroma. She closed her eyes and thought of the shoebox tucked away in the entryway, its label still visible on the underside. The permanent marker had smudged over time, as if the word leftovers resisted being etched into her story. Distant rumble signaled Alex departing for a midday appointment. He paused at the threshold, brushing Maya's shoulder with warmth. He had mimed encouragement without words, as he so often did, embodying kindness in gesture rather than grand declarations. Maya felt gratitude bloom within her before he slipped away. In the silence, she resolved to transform every corner of the house into her own canvas. The guest room would become her writing retreat. The sunroom would host potted herbs and a hammock for lazy mornings, each room a testament to choices made rather than expectations met. She retrieved her laptop and settled at the kitchen peninsula. As the screen lit up, her mind cataloged the tasks ahead: notifying the landlord of the old apartment, finalizing paperwork for her community college credits, and devising a plan to publish her first essay collection. The shoebox and its lost contents receded into memory, a cautionary relic rather than a lingering wound. The morning wore on. Maya drafted an email to her contacts at the college archives, requesting permissions to access old journal entries and photographs. She paused at a phrase about reclaiming one's narrative and deleted it, replacing it with language that focused on forward momentum rather than past grievances. Midday light spilled through the kitchen window as she heard a car door slam outside. She glanced toward the front door and noticed Nathan's car parked in the driveway. A knot tightened in her stomach. She opened the door without preamble. Nathan stood poised in the threshold, his suit from the wedding pressed and neat. His gaze flickered from the jasmine wreath to the mugs on the table, as though weighing whether he belonged in this space. He held something behind his back. Maya guessed it was an apology, or perhaps an attempt at reconciliation. Her throat constricted. She invited him inside with a respectful nod. He stepped across the threshold, and the floorboards creaked beneath his polished shoes. The afternoon sunlight painted his face in stripes. Maya gestured toward the kitchen island, where she had left 2 mugs of cold coffee. He accepted one and lifted it with trembling fingers. A third flashback intruded: Maya visiting her childhood home on the anniversary of a long-ago birthday. The house smelled of stale candles and regret. Evelyn had offered her a single store-bought cupcake, remarking that it was the most practical choice. Maya had watched Nathan receive a layered cake with custom icing and felt the hollow echo of absence inside her chest. Back in the present, Nathan met her gaze with haunted eyes. Maya sensed his regret layered upon old entitlement. She recognized how he sought forgiveness for a pain he had never fully understood. Her heart softened, but she remained mindful of her boundaries. Without speaking aloud, Maya approached the shoebox display in the entryway. She lifted the lid to reveal nothing but empty space. The faint outline of the torn flap bore silent witness to the toast that once threatened to define her. She closed the box and set it aside, opening a small wooden drawer beneath the shelf. There, she placed the box among tools for sealing envelopes and rolls of blank parchment. It would remain as a journal of lessons learned rather than a pronouncement on her worth. Nathan watched her with gratitude and uncertain hope. In lieu of words, Maya guided him toward the sunlit reading nook, where overstuffed pillows and a low table awaited. She offered him a seat. He sat gingerly, as though entering new territory. In that bright alcove, Maya began to share her vision for the house. She described painting the guest room walls in a warm ochre, installing a window seat beneath the sunroom panes, and planting jasmine vines along the driveway. Nathan absorbed every detail in attentive silence, his expression shifting from hesitation to genuine interest. As she spoke, Maya realized that collaboration could coexist with autonomy. She could extend kindness without sacrificing self-respect. Their relationship might evolve into one where mutual care balanced past distortions. Outside, the window, a soft breeze caused the jasmine blossoms to tremble. The gentle movement suggested that even the most rooted vines could adapt to new conditions. Maya's gaze followed a single petal drifting onto the walkway. It landed near the doormat, its white hue vivid against the dark wood. Nathan rose and knelt to retrieve the petal. He placed it on the coffee table as though it were a sacred token. Maya felt a swell of possibility. In that small act lay a bridge between their past and an unwritten future. A sudden creak in the hallway announced Alex's return. Maya turned and stood to greet him. He joined them in the reading nook, surveying the shared space with pride. Maya slipped Nathan's hand into her own. The gesture was neither ownership nor capitulation, but a recognition of shared growth. In the silence that followed, sunlight warred with shade across the floor. Shadows lengthened as afternoon edged toward evening. Maya closed her eyes and listened to the quiet pulse of her two most important allies standing beside her. She felt neither fear nor hesitation. Instead, she felt the unspoken promise that tomorrow would be rooted in choice rather than obligation. A final flash of memory surfaced. Maya as a child releasing a ribbon from a bundle of balloons, watching it drift until it became a tiny dot in the sky. The ribbon had carried her whispered wish to be chosen. Now, decades later, she knew that the true gift was giving herself that choice. The afternoon waned. Maya rose and crossed to the window, pressing her forehead to the cool glass. She watched flags of jasmine fall softly onto the walkway. Each petal that drifted away mirrored the final release of expectations once imposed upon her. Within the house, Alex turned off the light in the corridor, leaving the reading nook bathed in golden slanting rays. Maya opened the door to the sunroom and stepped forward onto the porch, flanked by Nathan and Alex. The jasmine vines arched overhead as a silent canopy. Maya extended her hand to touch the rough bark of the olive tree that once sheltered her shame. Now it stood as witness to her transformation. She closed her fingers softly around a low branch, acknowledging every chapter of her journey. Under that arch of white blossoms and green leaves, she finally comprehended how resilience takes root. It begins in darkness but reaches for light with unwavering intent. Morning mist curled along the driveway as Maya stepped onto the front porch, the silver key heavy in her palm. She paused to breathe the cool air, letting the scent of newly planted jasmine and fresh paint fill her lungs. Behind her, Alex and Nathan exchanged silent nods before leaving her to the hush of the new home. Inside, the house felt impossibly large and warm. Sunlight spilled through windows framed with pale ochre drapes. On the mantel, the single sunflower leaned toward the light as though eager to witness whatever came next. Maya closed the door gently and allowed the silence to settle around her. Half-opened envelope lay on the entry table. It bore no return address, only Maya's name in Nathan's careful script. She slid a finger beneath the flap and unfolded the crisp paper. The message was brief. A hope that she might forgive their mother and consider returning home for Easter. Beneath the typed words lay a postscript in pencil. She is sorry. Maya's throat tightened. The word sorry had echoed in her life only as a concession, rather than an admission of fault. She folded the note and placed it atop her journal. The page inscribed "I choose me" shimmered with significance. Forgiveness could exist without erasure. She traced the letters with her fingertip, weighing the offer. Memory rippled through her mind. Evelyn pacing the living room one autumn afternoon, voice tight as she recounted a lost pregnancy decades before Maya was born. The grief had crackled in the air like spilled glass, yet Maya had absorbed none of its tenderness. Instead, she had filed it away amid the routines of approval-seeking. In that moment, she realized that her mother's favoritism had sprung from unhealed sorrow rather than disdain for Maya. The recollection softened the edges of resentment, but stirred a new conflict. If Evelyn's cruelty masked a broken heart, could compassion bridge their chasm? The question pulsed in Maya's veins, as though demanding an answer. A sudden knock fractured the stillness. Maya's hand trembled as she crossed the foyer. Through the glass pane, she saw Evelyn's angular silhouette. The woman stood rigid beneath the jasmine wreath, arms folded as though preparing for battle. Maya opened the door. Evelyn's eyes flickered with something between fear and relief. She stepped inside, brushing a strand of silver-streaked hair from her face. The familiar scent of her perfume, rose water with a hint of sandalwood, washed over Maya, and unearthed memories of childhood birthdays spent beneath a marshmallow-flavored candle. No words passed between them for a breath. Evelyn's gaze roamed the foyer, the oak shelf bearing the silent shoebox, the slender key ring reclaimed from sapling vines. She touched the paneling as though verifying its tangibility. In the living room, Maya guided Evelyn to the edge of the sunlit rug. The sunflower watched them. Evelyn's shoulders trembled as she whispered an admission too raw for direct speech. Maya remembered the nights she lay sleepless, heart hammering, when no one knew her need for simple praise. Now she held the power to respond. Evelyn recounted the years before Nathan's birth when a doctor told her she might never have children. The relief she had felt upon learning she was pregnant with Nathan had blossomed into fierce love, a love so consuming that nothing else seemed to matter. Maya felt the weight of that revelation settle like autumn leaves. The unmet longing had redirected Evelyn's devotion into a single vessel, leaving little for anyone else. A long moment stretched between them. Maya visualized the shoebox in the entryway and the worn pages of her journal. Forgiveness felt expansive rather than diminishing. She realized that to embrace compassion did not require surrendering her self-worth. She stepped forward and placed a hand on Evelyn's arm. The contact quivered with their shared history, past disappointments, sibling rivalry, the sting of neglect. Evelyn's frame relaxed under Maya's touch, as though relief had finally found an outlet. Without breaking eye contact, Maya led Evelyn toward the kitchen. She filled 2 mugs with peppermint ginger tea from freshly steeped leaves. The steam waltzed between them, a silent overture of reconciliation. Evelyn accepted a mug with unsteady fingers, her eyes glistening like morning frost. Outside, a robin's song greeted the day. In the kitchen's lamplit glow, Maya spoke at last. Her voice was steady, each word deliberate. She acknowledged the pain of being unseen, then offered understanding for a mother driven by her own losses. Evelyn bowed her head, tears tracing silver tracks down her cheeks. Dramatic irony lingered in the air. Maya knew the root of Evelyn's favoritism, but Evelyn remained unaware of Maya's own journey to self-choice. It was a truth neither could yet voice aloud. A sudden shift in light drew their attention to the entry table. Nathan's letter lay atop the journal, its postscript now illuminated by a slanted beam. Maya retrieved the note and placed it in Evelyn's hand without pause. Evelyn read the words and lifted her eyes. Guilt and hope collided there. In a gesture of unity, Maya retrieved the silver key from her pocket and set it in Evelyn's palm. The metal caught the light and fractured it into tiny sparks. Evelyn traced the ridges with her thumb, marveling as though discovering a compass to guide her toward new priorities. Maya guided her mother toward the doorway. The jasmine wreath loomed overhead as witness to their fragile accord. Evelyn paused. At the threshold, her gaze drifting to the distant memory of a wedding tent aglow under string lights. She inhaled, then exhaled as though releasing every unspoken apology she had carried. When she stepped back into the world beyond the porch, it was as though she had shed a lifetime of unimaginable weight. Maya closed the door softly behind her, leaving the key balanced on the table like an unspoken vow. In the sudden hush, Maya felt the house exhale too. The sunflower on the mantel turned lazily toward the window, as if acknowledging growth in unexpected soil. Maya settled into the sunlit reading nook, her journal open beside her. She wrote a single line beneath the page turned to blank. April dawn's forgiveness. Outside, the jasmine petals fluttered to the walkway in silent applause. Maya watched them drift, knowing each one signified a choice reclaimed. Maya stood in the foyer as the late afternoon sun cast long, slanted beams through the windows. Dust motes drifted like tiny dancers in the warm light. On the entry table lay the silver key resting beside her journal, its leather cover worn, smooth by her fingertips. Today felt both like an ending and a beginning, an intersection of every choice she had ever made. A sudden breeze stirred the jasmine wreath overhead, sending a single petal spiraling to the floor. Maya bent to retrieve it, cradling the delicate bloom in her hand. The petal's edge was frayed, yet it retained the fragrance of hopeful mornings. She traced its curve and recalled the first night she'd held the battered shoebox, its ribbon of neglect a stark contrast to this symbol of growth. In the kitchen, the marble countertop still bore the imprints of morning coffee mugs. Alex entered, through the back hallway, removing his work jacket as though shedding yesterday's burdens. He carried 2 envelopes, one addressed in Evelyn's careful script, the other in Nathan's tentative handwriting. He placed them before Maya without comment, watching her face for cue. Maya picked up Evelyn's envelope first. Inside was a brief note. "I forgive you. Love, Evelyn." Tears pricked at her eyes as she read the simple words. Beneath them lay the echo of decades of unspoken anguish, a mother's apology at last offered without excuse. Maya folded the note and slipped it into her journal, a bookmark between the pages of memory. Next, she opened Nathan's envelope. His apology was more detailed, acknowledging every overlooked effort and promising to stand by her as an equal. He invited her to co-host a family reunion next summer. No roles assigned, only partnership. Maya read his words, feeling the tentative bridge extend toward her. A flash of the wedding night's harsh glow rose unbidden, then dissolved into the warm kitchen light. Maya took a steadying breath and looked up at Alex. His eyes held quiet, pride and unwavering support. She reached out, brushing her fingertips across his palm as though anchoring herself to this moment. Without warning, Evelyn appeared in the doorway. Her face was drawn, but resolute. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her, the jasmine wreath stirring once more. The 3 of them, Maya, Alex, and Evelyn, formed a fragile triangle in the kitchen's golden glow. Evelyn's voice trembled as she spoke without preamble. She admitted how her own losses had warped her love into a narrow beam aimed solely at Nathan. She confessed fear that if she spread her devotion, she might lose it altogether. Maya recognized again the human heart's need for containment, yet she also felt compassion unfurling within her. Nathan entered next, pausing at the threshold. He looked more at ease than Maya had ever seen him here, as though stepping into her world rather than overshadowing it. He stood beside Evelyn, a silent testament to the family they would rebuild together. In the hush that followed, the grandfather clock in the living room chimed 6 times. Its steady voice echoed through open doorways, reminding them that time moves forward, whether pain is acknowledged or denied. Maya closed her journal and set it on the counter, the words "I choose me" still vivid on the page. She picked up the silver key and held it aloft, its light fracturing into tiny prisms on the walls. This key, once secreted in the depths of her pocket, now symbolized not just entry to a house, but access to self-worth and belonging. She extended it first toward Evelyn and then Nathan, offering each the chance to step fully into her life, on new terms. Evelyn moved forward and accepted the key with trembling fingers. As she touched the metal, her shoulders relaxed, and her eyes glistened with relief. Nathan followed, his own acceptance quieter, but no less significant. He slipped the key into his pocket, a pledge that he would honor the trust Maya extended. Alex stepped beside Maya, their hands brushing. In that contact lay the culmination of every shared struggle and silent affirmation. Together, they formed a circle of reconciliation and promise, unity forged through candor and choice. Outside, twilight deepened, and the jasmine vines shivered under a mist of new evening. The sunflower on the mantel tilted its head toward the dusk light, as though acknowledging that each day's end carries the seed of tomorrow's dawn. Maya closed her eyes and inhaled the mingled scents of tea and jasmine, coffee and fresh paint. She felt neither fear nor hesitation, but steadiness, the steady pulse of self-knowledge that had been absent for so long. In her chest, the echo of the charred toast dissolved into a memory no longer sharp, but weathered, like smooth river stones. She opened her eyes and spoke for the first time to all of them, her voice calm and resonant. She declared that no one's worth would ever again be determined by leftovers or crumbs. She affirmed that love could heal without defining or consuming. She invited them to build new traditions, birthdays shared, achievements celebrated, everyday moments treasured. Evelyn smiled through tears. Nathan nodded, a shy but genuine smile flickering on his lips. Alex placed his arm around Maya's waist, steady and true. In the fading glow of Chapter 6's closing scene, the camera would pull back through the front door, past the jasmine-clad porch, down the walkway lined with lanterns, and into the street where the world waited vast and open. The shoebox no longer belonged at the center of Maya's story. Instead, the silver key shone as the talisman of reclamation, proof that a life claimed by one's own hand holds the power to transform every relation and every dawn yet to break.